Hello everybody and welcome. So this is a guide designed for somebody who's looking to buy a tank. Maybe you want to buy a tank for a kid or a niece, nephew, brother, sister, yourself, whatever it may be. You're looking to buy a tank and maybe you don't know where to start. You haven't bought a tank before and you just need the essentials. So we're going to kind of go over two different tank styles, and this is really more for the community tank. So if you want multiple species of fish rather than just a pet betta or a pet goldfish in a small tank or some shrimp in a small tank, this is more for the 10, 15, 20 gallon and up size tanks that you see behind me. And who am I? Well, I'm a guy who's been keeping fish for the better part of 30 years. And the last 8 years I've been keeping fish solid. It's been the whole drive of my life, basically my job, either working at a pet store or keeping fish, selling fish, breeding fish, raising plants, and running the YouTube. So I want to welcome you guys, and I hope this guide will be useful because there's so many kits out there now. There used to kind of be some really basic ones, and now there's a lot of options and there's a lot to consider. And depending on how you want to keep your fish, there's a lot of different ways to do it, and maybe it makes sense to buy one of the kits and maybe it doesn't. And some of it's convenient, some of it's financial, and some of it is just how it looks. You know, there's certain kits that have a design style more than they consider how the animals are going to do. So all that comes into play, and I just wanted to show you really quick the kind of tanks I keep so you can get a feel that when we go into the store and I show you guys stuff and talk about filtration and different things, you can see that there's different ways to do it, but you can have in mind the kind of tanks that I keep, just so you can be on the same page. So let's take a look real quick. So my favorite type of tank is going to be a hang off the back filter like this one over here with a powerful light and a substrate with active substrate that has nourishment for the plants. And then usually I will forage rocks and wood and things like that, and I'll have a diverse range of species in my tanks. So this is one example. I'll show you a couple others. Another very popular tank that I like to keep is, again, a medium powered light, and this one has a sponge filter, and you can't see it very well back in there, but up in this tank you can see the sponge filter, and that's all powered off air lines that run from a central air pump. And then I also keep breeding tanks where I've kept fish like these little guys that are growing out, as well as all sorts of other tanks where I have the adults sectioned off from the babies, you know, guppies, community fish, specialized fish, African cichlids. I do a little bit of everything, and I've got about 30 tanks right now. So I just wanted to show you that as a starting point. And we'll end up back here to talk about pricing and what it is you need to just get started, for sure, the things you really need. And as we walk through the store, you'll also get a feel for that, what your options are. So let's go ahead and get to it. Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Alex Williamson here with The Secret History Living in Your Aquarium. Today we are at a big box pet store, and what I want to do is take a look at some of the kits they have and tell you what you need and what you don't need. This is what's in some kits, what's not, and how you can spend your money most effectively at these stores. So let's go inside and see what they've got. Things have always been changing, but they do have a lot better options than they used to, I've noticed. So we'll take a look, whether it's the light, the substrate, the heater, the medications and test strips, things like that. Let's talk about the costs of really setting up an aquarium the proper way. And if you're going to use one of these as your main sources, not counting the fish, let's talk about what goes into that. So let's go inside. Alright, so as we come in, we've got all sorts of tanks. Boy, that is a nice 125. I'd love to have a big tank like that. But if you're getting your first tank, you're probably looking at something more around these sizes. You know, something like a 50 or a 75 at biggest, and probably more likely a 36, a 20, or a 10. And when you look at them, usually they'll come with something, but you'll notice that the core inside is sold separately usually. So really all these displays are showing is a tank with maybe a light, and in this case not even that, just a lid, the tank, and the shelf or stand, and for whatever price is advertised. That's just the beginning. So you're definitely going to need to buy a net, so maybe $2 or $3, probably a gravel vac or something to siphon water with, so that's going to be another $10 or so. Something to maybe clean the glass with, another $5, $10. You can use sponges and things at home, but you know, I suggest getting the right gear. It makes life easier in most of the time. Alright, so most likely we're going to be looking at something in here, and if we want to get something like a betta, then we'll want, you know, a tank that's at least this size. Honestly, they have smaller sizes, and some of them are pretty stylish, with, you know, trim and little feet and molding and stuff, but I don't think we really need anything like that. You can get the simpler tanks like this. These kits now, I think they come with pretty much everything you need, which is really nice, because in the past they didn't. So for $59.99 and then 20% off that right now on all these kits, you can get an old school thermometer, which, I mean, that's reliable, but don't necessarily need that. A water test vial, so I guess that's to bring it in to test probably, so that's kind of pointless. But then we've got the filters, which is nice. 10-gallon, it's good up to 10 gallons, even though it's a 5-gallon kit. And set up, it will be what you need for that. And so really we need a filter, we need a light, we need substrate. Now there's not any substrate, so you'll still have to figure that out, whether you get rocks from the garden or the fancy gravel from the store, whatever it is. We'll have to figure that out depending on whatever tank you pick. But some of these tanks, pretty good deal with what's in them now, because they come with the heater, the filter, and like I said, some of them even have the net and things like that. $69 plus 25% off, or 20% off. That's a good deal for getting started, because usually in the past you kind of had to buy everything separately. So you can get some of these more interesting ones, but for these I've found that the taller tanks are not super useful at this size, because fish either kind of hang out on the bottom, middle, or top, and if they hang out there, then they've only got a very small footprint of where they're hanging out. And so I guess you could get a couple Corys, maybe like 5 of the little ones in a 10-gallon like this, and you know, some neon tetras or some live bears, but really a layout that's more classical, your typical rectangular kit, is going to be better. And see, these kits, they don't come with a good light, so that's going to be a decent expense if you want a planted tank or just to see your fish. But comes with the filter. These cartridges really, we'll talk about filtration, but you don't need them. This vial is useless. It might as well be a shot glass or a Ziploc bag, because it just means you're bringing in your sample. The thermometer is a little old school, but it works. And the net, again, that's a $2 or $3 value. So you kind of have to price out for $80. These are probably, these filters, $20 or $30 maybe. And then the heater's another $20 or $30 probably. And the tank you can get on sale a lot of times for half off. And if it's half off, it's maybe $20 for a 10-gallon. It just depends. They used to have the $1 per gallon sale, and they've quit that at Petco. But really, these kits, what you need to price out to figure out if it makes sense for you is, are you getting a filter that's good enough, and are you getting a heater that's good enough? And in some of these kits, I would say no. Like, this is a 30-gallon filter at max, and I would say you want a bigger filter than that for a 30-gallon or 29-gallon tank. So you probably have to go out and buy a different filter. And heater, if your room's already 70 degrees, a 100-watt heater will do. But if your room's colder, 50 or 60, you're gonna want something else. So you're gonna want something that can heat it up more. Now there's other kits like these, and they always show a beautiful aquascape and everything. But really what it comes with is a light and the tank. And sometimes they have filtration built in and things like that. So sometimes these are a good solution. But as big as the box is and everything, they're only 15 gallons. They've got a curved front, which can be a little tricky to clean. And scaping them can be interesting. Plus you lose some of the space due to the filtration reservoir in the back. Beyond that, they also have kind of systems that are proprietary, like these. And it's kind of nice to hide the heater and all that stuff if you're doing an aquascape, but it's all going to go in that back area here. And then you have to figure out, you know, what the scape's really going to look like. It's funny, they photoshopped this and they messed up on the Photoshop on the band there. You can see they put the background in first and then dropped that in. And this is from a way bigger tank because they tried to wash out some of the fish that are over here and stuff. Anyways, that's just funny on a Fluval note. But Marine Land, they also have some. They come with a light that's going to be good enough for basic fish and low light plants. They come with a heater and a filter. Always in these kits, the filter seems to be one that comes with a bunch of cartridges and things that they want you to buy more pieces of. And we're going to look at them individually, even if they're not on sale, and compare that. Because like a tank for a 10-gallon, just the tank is 29 bucks, not on sale. On sale, you can get them for 15, 20 bucks usually, or at a garage sale or whatever. So really, what is it that you're getting in these big kits? It's an extra value of whatever the filter and the heater is, plus I suppose a thermometer, but ideally I'd probably get a different type of thermometer, or even a digital one that you use with the handheld little thermometer infrared gun. I think those are the best, especially if you have multiple tanks, because sometimes the different temperatures on different ends of the tank, especially if you have one little heater on a tank this size, a 200-watt heater is probably nowhere enough for a 55-gallon tank to heat the whole thing up, unless your room is within 5 degrees, 10 degrees of that temperature. The lid is helpful though. I don't like lids on my tanks. I love being able to get in there quickly and look down. And now when we talk about lights, the light on a kit like this, again, this thing is just trying to sell you stuff you don't need really. You can buy filter floss, much cheaper. And let me show you the filter floss, and then we'll go look at, again, so even if these tanks are 50 bucks, not on sale, so you spend the 50 bucks on the tank, or 100 on a 40-gallon, you can get these on sale usually for around $50 on the big sales they do. So wait till a sale or get it secondhand. And you don't need all the backing and stuff. Some kits will come with all that kind of stuff, and you really don't need it. If you like it, that's fine. That's up to you. And they have even more kits now, which I like in theory. The idea is good. Some of these actually are nice, in that, you know, this is much better than the old bowl they used to sell you with the betta, but I just don't think that it quite does the trick. These kits seem really worthwhile though, in that you get your filtration and your heater and a net. Again, the net's negligible, and then a lid. The thing is, it comes with a light yet again. In all these kits, almost all the lights you can buy at these big box stores are not good enough to be growing what you see pictured on the boxes. Now, the exceptions are going to be these Planted Plus, which is really the Fluval 3.0 sold just for these big box stores. And this light, as you can see, anywhere from $149 all the way up to $270 plus tax here. So that's going to be a $300 light in my state for the larger size. So you can get by definitely on the Fluval Aqua Sky or the Marine Land, and then you're down in the another range. But honestly, I'd go online and buy like a Higer or a Nicrew or a Beamswork, something like that. All these lights are way overpriced. They're not going to do the trick for you for growing plants. Now, they might expose the fish enough that you can see them, but that's about it. When it comes to these old tubes, they're really phasing them out, and things aren't being built for them lid-wise and stuff. So I would definitely go with LED. Saves you a lot of energy also in the long run. You can also get different lids and things. So if you wanted to buy just the tank with nothing else, it's cheaper on sale. And then those things it comes with, really, when you look at the price of what they cost, add up what they cost, obviously, and you can see this is up to a 70-gallon filter for $34. This is what I got for my 50-gallon tank, and it's done a pretty good job. I've used pretty much all these brands over time, and they'll always try to sell you this stuff. So for one, the charcoal, you don't need it. It's only really for taking out medications. You do need these things, and they do come in the filter kits, so that's fine. Some of these are like packs that come with everything together, and that's not the worst deal in the world. You know, somewhere between $5 and $10 it looks like, maybe 15 for the bigger packs. But again, if you have multiple tanks or whatnot, you're better off just buying these materials on their own. You can get a big old bag of what we call filter floss. I don't see it here actually, but they have filter floss a lot of times here, or just buy it online. It might be cheaper. And that is going to be just basically the same stuff that you'd stuff a pillow with, and it will do the same exact job as these. Water might not flow through it quite as evenly, but over time it'll save you a ton of money, because you can wring it out a couple times and reuse it, or you can just toss it each time and it would still be way cheaper. There's also all sorts of options for hiding the filter, so you do like a canister filter type setup. But instead of that, you know, I recommend for your first tank always getting to learn the filter system and how it works, and how you have a fine, a coarse, and then a polishing filter. These are kind of your base of what you're going to be building off of within the filter. Any filter that you buy, be it the Fluval, you know, Aqua Clears, which used to look like this, by the way, they're going to have those same elements. So it's that coarse sponge, then the bio beads, which have the good bacteria on them, and so does the sponge, and it acts as a filter. And then whatever you have on top up here is your polishing. And so really you only need the charcoal, which they give you. It clogs up and isn't useful within very short time. It's not useful anymore. So it acts just like the other things, only finer. So it's just like this is like a Swiss cheese that collects stuff like bacteria and clumps of poop and food and plant leaves and things. The charcoal does it, but on a microscopic scale for compounds and chemicals. And so it gets filled up just like these sponges do, but within 2 to 3 days. So you're gonna burn through those like crazy if you actually want them to be effective while they're doing it. The other thing that you're gonna want to look at when you're comparing these things, see, even some of these massive filters are only an extra $50, and those kits sometimes, unless they're on sale, are gonna be more than that. So let's look at the heater prices. We know the light is going to be somewhere between $50 and $200, maybe even $300, depending on the size of the tank, if you want to grow the kind of stuff that you see on the packages of these kits, usually the aquascapes, the really lush plants. Now, when you look at these heaters, they're selling you the Top Fin brand, which is the in-house brand, and these ones are more likely to break. The Pro series are a little bit better. they conduct heat a little more evenly, and they usually have some kind of emergency shut off, or like when the water's too low, they have some different features like that. You can go ultra low budget, and I mean, you can end up buying, sometimes it's cheaper to buy two 100 watts rather than a 200 watt. It just depends on your store and your brand and what you're looking to do. Sometimes you want it even on either end of the tank, but all of that is an option. If you're running multiple tanks though, you can also do an air pump. So for only 21 bucks and then some tubing, which is $3 or whatever for each tank, you can get that and an air stone and an air filter, or a sponge filter rather. And I'd go to Aquarium Co-op and buy theirs on their website, because, you know, I think it's $5 or $8 for the equivalent of these size here, and they have some other features that you'll definitely be grateful you had compared to these setups here, for clean out and whatnot. And that is just as good as those filters over there are, for the biological, for handling your nitrogen cycle, your nitrates, your nitrites, your ammonia. And so is the filter floss that I mentioned. If you just want to buy one of the kits and fill it with filter floss, that works too. And that's what I do. Many of the filters I have at home just have the sponge at the bottom, the bio beads, and then they're packed with filter floss. And you could literally do that with a Tupperware container and a water pump if that's what you wanted to do. So they're very simple technology in what they do, but there are different features. Like this one has a skimmer and a pre-filter. The pre-filter would be really useful. It's just more surface area to grow good stuff on. If you're keeping for the first time, don't buy any of the fake plants unless you're taking care of cichlids. Try out the real ones. They're pretty easy to do in a tank, even if you have no experience. This aquascaping rock, way too expensive here. Don't buy it here, or at any store. It would be my recommendation. Wait till you find someone who has it. Now, there's all sorts of products. You're gonna need a dechlorinator. I like Prime. They have stuff with aloe vera and other, you know, different things in each one, stress coat and enzymes supposedly to make them feel better and things. But really, I like to keep things one element at a time, and that way you know, okay, I'm using this so that I added that and it impacted X, Y, or Z. You don't have a million variables to try to track down if something goes wrong in your tank. And that way, if you add something like an antibiotic, then you'll know, okay, it was the antibiotic and it wasn't the fact that I added something in the dechlorinator or in a cycling thing that threw it off. But generally, it depends on where you are, what country and all that. Generally, you can get General Cure and some sort of fenbendazole or flubendazole. Look for that as the active ingredient, if that even lists. Oh yeah, so this is doxycycline. So that's not going to be what you'd want, but generally you want some sort of parasite treatment, and then you also want metronidazole. It will help with a lot of parasites and things. So when we're talking about meds to have on hand, definitely I'd recommend, you can get something for ick if you want, but really turning the temp up to 86 will do it in 2 weeks. That usually treats it, and doing some water changes. But if you want that, no shame in it. I understand turning up the heat and waiting is a rough call for a lot of people, but you're going to want some sort of either, I think the liquid test kit is really kind of the gold standard for most hobbyists. Make sure you get fresh water, or if you're doing salt water, do salt water, but that's going to be another $40. So altogether, when you add it up, we'll talk about it at the very end, it can be a little pricey with all these chemicals, but really what you need is a dechlorinator and a test kit to start. All the medications and stuff beyond that you can get later. So yeah. Alright everybody, we're back from the store, and I know there was a lot to look at, but what I want to talk to you guys about is what you need for keeping a fish that we talked about as kind of those extras that usually don't come in a kit. Now, some of the kits do come with some of these things now, but for the most part, you're not going to be getting certain things beyond. They may include these as kind of items to make the kit look like it's worth more, and those may be nets, for instance. These are anywhere from $2 to $5, $10 if they're really big nets, dollars usually. You can get them in all colors or whatnot, especially if you have multiple tanks for multiple kids maybe, or you need to keep track of one net for one tank or whatever the purpose may be. But of course you're going to need those at some point. You may not need them to keep the fish alive, but this stuff is kind of things that you're going to need to acquire at one point or another. So then you're also going to need to spend probably $5 to $10 on something to clean the tank. Now, really, you need two things with most tanks at one point or another, and that is a razor blade to clean things, and that's anywhere from $5 to $10 for that usually, plus the refills. And then you're going to need either a Brillo pad or a sponge, something to scour the surface with. You can buy one that's purpose-built like this, or you can use something like Magic Eraser scrub surface things. I don't know what they're called, sponges I guess, but you can use something like that. Now, another thing you're going to need when you're cycling your tank is going to be a way to test when your ammonia is gone, when your nitrites are gone, and when your nitrates start rising, but then you do water changes to keep those in check. You'll need to learn all about the water cycle, so if you don't already know about that, definitely go watch some videos on that or read up about it. But you can go with the test strips. These are $20 a piece at big box stores for only 20 to 30 test strips usually. Aquarium Co-op has a really good deal on strips. They're not the most accurate, any strips really, but they'll tell you the pH, the total dissolved solids, basically your KH or GH, your calcium and carbon in the tank. And then they'll also tell you whether you have, some of them will tell you whether you have ammonia, but usually they'll tell you whether you have nitrates or nitrites, and then a color scale of that listed on the back. Now, a more effective method is these little test vials. You just put a couple drops of two different solutions usually into a tube of the tank water. It turns the color. You look at the chart. Those are usually $30 to $40 to get the API brand, and that's my favorite brand. That's really the gold standard. But if you want to go really fancy, you can get things like TDS meters and thermometers that are digital, and still on Amazon or somewhere like that is where I would go to get that, and you're only going to spend maybe $20 for those kind of things. Along with that, you're going to need water dechlorinator if you're not on well water or harvesting your water or letting it age or something like that. But if you're using city water or tap water, you're probably going to need a dechlorinator. Now, I like Seachem Prime or Safe. It tends to be about $5 to $10 for a bottle like this, 15 for the big bottles. And you only need about a drop or two in a 5-gallon bucket. And of the Safe version, there's Prime and then there's Safe. Safe is even less. You only need like 1 drop per 10 gallons dechlorinator. Now, you'll also need this, and this is, we looked in the store, and this is the Swedish made, no, I'm just kidding, but this is a siphon. It's a gravel vac, and it is used for water changes as well as for cleaning out the bottom of your tank of any fish poo or anything else that leaf debris and just stuff over time that builds up. So really, those things, as well as a fish food, you might want to start with something small, just like flake food is fine. And if you get into bigger fish or specialized fish, you may need to get wafers or cichlids or pellets. Or for cichlids, you may need to get special pellets or omnivore food. And you can go everywhere from the top of the line frozen all the way to the inexpensive flake food. And I tend to switch it up. I use a little of each, but it can get expensive. You know, I go through for each tank usually somewhere between, you know, for a 20-gallon tank like these full of community fish, maybe a little jar of flake food will last me 3 months, but I have 30 of them. So it lasts me a month. I go buy, you know, several of them. and it adds up. Now, beyond all that stuff, what really is the meat and potatoes of how you want to run your tank is going to be, what kind of filter do you want? Do you want a air filter? You see all the lines coming off there, and that would mean that you are then using a sponge filter like we talked about. And these are just fine. You can use an air stone or a sponge filter. They work great. Now you can also use more of a canister or hybrid that has like a little container at the bottom and then more sponge and filtration on it. The more surface area, which a sponge has a ton of, the better. But that's all air powered when you do that. And so you have to make that decision whether you want an air powered system, and if you have a bunch of tanks, you may. If you have one tank, you also may want to do that. But if you have just one community tank that's, medium size or something like this, you might find it better to use a hang off the back filter. And you can see down there, we've got a big old one running. Over across the room again where we started, we've got another one running. And this is where we were getting into things like cartridges. Again, a reminder, check your parameters when things are new, but you're going to have your coarse media that's more surface area. Then you're going to have the stuff that really filters out all the muck in your tank, and these you just wring out in fresh water and then can put back in. This is that pillow batting stuff that I was saying was so inexpensive that you can get a hold of and use. You can find it online. It's called Aquarium Floss or Filter Floss. And again, depending on the size of your aquarium, you need to decide on what size of filtration you want. The next thing, depending on where you live, if you live somewhere colder than 70 degrees year-round, you're definitely going to need a heater. Now, if you're keeping goldfish or just a betta, you may not need a heater if you live in California or Florida or Texas, perhaps. Maybe your house is always 74, 75 degrees or warmer, but I would still suggest getting a heater. Now, one major thing that the kits will do that's a bummer is they'll sell you these, which are heaters that go to 78 degrees, which is kind of the average tropical fish temperature, and you don't necessarily want that. You may just want a 72 or 74 degree heat. Like this is a lake inlay tank from Southeast Asia, and they have a little bit below tropical temperature water, so they like it that way. Plants also don't like it super hot. On the other hand, you may have discus and you may need 85 degree, or German blue rams, you may want really hot water. And so that's where a more expensive heater that generally doesn't come in the kits, you might be better off buying something for $30 to $50 like this. And I'd also recommend the Pro Series, because spending that extra $10 usually will prevent, one, it heats the tank more evenly, and two, it prevents the thing from burning out and frying all your fish, which is a pretty common occurrence, sadly, in our hobby. They haven't seemed to fix that in the heater part of the hobby. Now, the most important part, really, if you're growing plants and stuff in your tank, after all that, because filtration, you can do a bunch of different ways. The next most important part is going to be your light. You can go all the way from real high-end, hundreds of dollars of lights, even up into the thousands if you have a big tank. Or you can get something like this $55 Hygger light. I have a whole video on it. You can check it out on my channel. And that would be kind of the light you need to really get plants growing well. The Fluval 3.0 is really the gold standard that we looked at in the store too, and it will grow most plants pretty well too. Now, if you want to do aquascaping and carpeting like you see some people doing, sorry we keep turning around, like you see some people doing, like you kind of see going on here, like a fancier tank that's low to the ground, lush, and you keep it trimmed, then you're going to need things like CO2 and lighting and specific plants that are more expensive generally that you'll have to learn to upkeep. You're going to need things like scissors and fertilizers and all that stuff. But if you're not worried about that and you just want a tank like one of the ones that you've seen like these that we've looked at. You know, you can use sand as the substrate. You can get a 50-pound bag from the hardware store. I would get pool filter stand. The HTH brand is a really good one, and it's about 25 bucks for 50 pounds, and that will work great. It'll work for a couple different tanks if you need a couple. Also, you can just use rocks from your local river. I have whole videos on what's safe and what's not with rocks and wood, but there's lots of options out there. So once you figure out how intense of a light you need, you can even use shop lights from Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, wherever you want to shop. But this is enough to see your fish and to grow some basic plants. It may tend to grow more algae, and that's why you may want to go with a more specialized light like an LED, like I have on most of my tanks. But you've got everything from, this is a light that would come with a kit. It's really only capable of growing slow growing plants, and you'll have to learn about what plants grow fast, what grows slow, and so forth. I just want to put this bug in your head that if you do things right, you can keep things without a filter at all and really using light from the window, you know, right outside. So I have a number of tanks that have no filters. This one's running one right now, but these ones don't have a filter. This one didn't until just the other day. We're getting ready for pond season, but there's all sorts of ways to do things. And the right way to do things changes once you get into the hobby a little more. But I don't want to advise anybody not to keep a filter in their tank until they've kind of got the basics down. So that is really what you need to think about. The substrate can be a little expensive, especially if you want to grow plants in it. You can see I've got a lasagna layering of substrate in this tank. But with all those things considered, your filtration, your lights, your substrate, then you can start spending money on fish. But in all, you're going to spend quite a bit of money, and it may not make sense to get a kit if you want to do something very specialized, if you're keeping discus or German blue rams. If you just want some neon tetras or some live bears, some guppies, or you know, gouramis, the kind of stuff you see at Petco, PetSmart, the big stores, then you're probably going to be okay set up with a gravel tank. You don't even need plants necessarily. But I do find that in general, plants keep the hobby way more interesting. They keep the fish happy. They provide hiding, comfort, and food for the little fish if you're raising fish. And I just think they look nice. They make me feel like I'm surrounded by nature and ponds. So that is the rundown for. Hope this was helpful information. I know it was a long one. If you liked it, please subscribe. There's always going to be more content every week. Please feel free to ask questions. We've got a very helpful community, and I try to answer as many questions as I can. And other than that, you know, the choice is yours. There are so many things you can get into in this hobby, so many ways to do things. But I really suggest that you do it right the first time. Don't go buy a kit that's 200 bucks and you think you have everything, and then you go do a bunch of trips that are $20 at a time, and you end up realizing that you didn't have it all. I mean, you might as well spend it right the first time. Spend the $350 or $400 it really does take to set up a nice planted tank, and really that is the same price for around a 10-gallon as it is for up to a 40-gallon, and then the price kind of jumps again. But you kind of have to buy these things, and they're all around the same price, so you're really only talking about a 10 to 20% difference in price for those things. Also, wait for a sale for the $1 per gallon or 50% off sales they have a couple times a year if you're not buying one of the kits. So that is the long video, and thanks for sticking it out, and I hope it was helpful. Let me know in the comments if it was. We can do more beginner content. I tend to kind of do more advanced stuff on this channel, but if you like this, if you're new to the hobby and all that, I'd love to hear about it so I can get a feel for who's watching these days. So thank you so much for spending your time with me. Again, that like button helps let me know that I'm doing things right, and it spreads it to other people who may find the video useful. And subscribe if you want to see more in the future. If not, no worries. Have a good one, take care, and I'll see you guys soon.